everyone, and welcome to the studio. This is it's time for this week's video demonstration, and this is our month of color. So it's going to be a colorful month, and we have to start in the beginning stages of understanding how to work with color, because our goal is to get interesting color, exciting color, and most importantly, harmonious color. And so I'm going to be sharing ways throughout the month of how we can accomplish this, but it actually begins with value. It's not about color, it's about value. Value is the key to having successful color, to having interesting color, to having exciting color and harmonious color. We think as pastel artists a lot of times that color is the most important thing, because we get so excited about all the pastels that we can buy and that we collect. But in truth, if we don't have a strong composition or design, and we don't have a strong value plan, then all the color in the world is not going to make our paintings work. So we have to get those other two things under our belts first, which is why that's what we've focused on the last couple of months: composition and design and value. Doing those value thumbnails and coming up with a good design are going to be really important for getting good color. All right, so I would love to dive right into color and talk to you about how do I choose the colors I choose, or how do I know what colors to put down under the underpainting. Those are the questions I get all the time. But actually we have to start a little bit further back and start without a lot of color, because to get good color we have to harness the power of the color and harness the values. So today I'm going to do a painting in which I only use one color, or one color family. And this is going to be proof, hopefully, if the painting turns out that value does the work, but it's color that gets the glory. What does that mean? It means if the values are right, then we can tell what the painting is, even if it's not the expected local color. So I'm going to paint today some trees and some reflections in a river here. And you can see that my photo's in black and white, and that makes it easier for me to not paint them green or the local color, because I only see the values. And then I went ahead and I did my 4 value thumbnails, so the darkest darks, the lightest light, and then the middle values. We've done this the last couple of months. I'm going to work with the value study to apply my color. Now I'm only going to use one color, and I selected blue as my color family. Is this good right here? I selected blue as my color family, and so what you're going to do is you want to have a range of blues, and think about the properties of color that I talked about earlier this week. Value. So you want a range of value from dark to light. You want a range of intensities, so I have some intense, bright, pure blues and some dull, downgrade blues. And you also want a variety of temperature, so you want some cooler blues, that would be the turquoises, excuse me, let me correct myself, the warmer blues are the turquoises, and then the cooler blues are the other ones that are not made with yellow. We'll talk about color temperature, so don't worry about that. We're going to get to that. But I have a variety here, so I have one color family, but I have a variety of values and intensities and temperatures. And so I will then begin the painting by looking at my thumbnail, which is why you want to make sure you get your thumbnail right. And I'm going to just use a new pastel to put in my initial drawing very lightly. So I've got this really kind of interesting tree shape, so I'm going to just get the big interesting shape down first, and then I'll get to the detail. There's some grass back here, and then there's a smaller tree. I can give you a quiz. What kind of composition would this be? I have a big thing on one side and a smaller thing on the other side. You can write your answer in the comments, and I will see if anyone gets it. Now, this is the river. So if something is above the river, it's going to be reflected in the river. So if I put something up, I'm going to put it down in the water. So these two trees are going to be reflected. The trees that are in the distance are too far back, and my angle of view would not allow me to see those in the water. So just keep that in mind. So once I have my drawing in place, I'm going to just copy my value thumbnail, and I'm going to first block in all of the dark shapes. And I'm going to go ahead and use this dark blue new pastel because it's a nice rich dark, and I think it'll work well for my dark shapes. There's also dark along the riverbank. Now I have to be very careful that I don't make this riverbank look like a worm. And a worm is something that if I were to have this dark shape all the way across without breaking it up, it would look like a worm or a snake, and it would be a barrier. We wouldn't be able to get past it. So I want to make sure I break that up. Worms happen a lot in our paintings where we don't realize it. Before we know it, we've got this big dark band. Especially happens a lot when we are painting banks of water or along the bottom edge of trees. It happens a lot. Now I'm going to block in the lightest value, and this is with a pale blue or very light blue. And that's the lightest value is going to be the sky and also down in the water. All right, and then I have my middle dark value, which is going to be those distant trees. So I selected a pastel that would work for that. So it's not as dark as the upright trees, but it's a little bit darker than the sky. And I need something to go in between for the flat area. So I just selected another one for in between. Yeah, and there's the block in. That's the first layer. I could put a little bit more of the water down in here. And I also need to pull a little bit more of the reflections. And then, now this tree, watch, it's not as tall, so I want to make sure the reflection matches up. I don't want to go all the way to the bottom because then it wouldn't reflect that tree properly. Whereas this is going to go off the page. Now, I'm ready to move on. So the first thing I want to do is take my piece of pipe insulation, and I'm going to rub in this first layer. If you've been watching my videos, then you know one of the reasons I'm rubbing in the first layer is so that I can cover up the very light bits of my paper. And by the way, I'm working on UArt, probably 500 grit sanded paper. And while I love UArt, sometimes the very light tone of the paper causes me to put down too many layers of pastel trying to cover it up. So if I rub in my first layer, I can eliminate that. I also want to have a very nice out of focus underpainting. Now, this is an important stage. I'm going to work on the reflections even in this underpainting stage. So anytime I make a reflection, something that's being reflected, I make vertical strokes. So I'm going to pull down my marks in a vertical or up and down manner. Anything reflected gets pulled down with vertical strokes. Now the water, on the other hand, is going to be done or rubbed in or applied with horizontal strokes. Oops. And it's this combination of the vertical and the horizontal that allows the reflection to look like something in water rather than just an upside down tree. All right, so when I keep working on this, I'll explain that a little bit more. So I've got the underpainting in place. Now I'm simply going to start layering. And by the way, I will not use this pipe insulation anymore. I'm going to move it out of my sight because a lot of times we end up using it like it's an eraser, and that it doesn't erase. It really just blends layers together and creates mud. Okay, so I'm going to start by reinforcing the darks. Now I'm really looking at my photo so I can get a better idea of the character of this tree. Now remember, I'm only using blue. So an interesting thought is trees are not blue, so how is it that can get away with painting a tree blue? Well, if I have the values right on my trees, and it's not all spotty and it looks like something, you can tell that it's something, we can tell that it's a tree, even if it's not what we think of as the normal color for a tree or the local color of the tree. But we have to get the values right, and I want to start with a nice, strong, simple shape. If I put a color up above the water, I'm going to put it down in the water. And that's how I keep my reflections looking like they're reflecting the right object. So just say to yourself, above the water, in the water. See, very simple. So that's one layer of dark blue. Now I'm going to pick another dark blue. Now, you probably can't see that I put down another color, and that's good. You don't want to see it necessarily, because if you see it, that means it's not the right value. And let me just show you what I mean. What if I were to put a mark like this? Now you see it. It jumps out. It's too light, and I can't use it just yet. So if you don't see it, that's a good thing. And I'm going to very just lightly layer it. I'm going to it's got, whoop, I pressed a little bit too hard. I want to come in and kind of put an indication of some of the branches right now. I think we need another little guy coming over here. I just think it's like, it seems weird, like two soldiers. So I'm going to take out my artistic license and add another little tree right there. And I think that might be a more interesting arrangement. Those of you who do gardening, I think you might agree that we want to put things in unequal numbers. So I just thought that might be good. Now I'm going to take another layer of dark blue. This is of a similar value. It's actually a tad lighter. Oops, I don't know if you caught what I didn't do. If it's above the water, it's in the water. So I have to go back with that other color and then put these both in the water. Above the water, in the water. Very simple. And I have one more dark blue. This is a dark warmer blue. So I'm not going to put it over where the shadow areas are. And I'm going to just decide that there's not much sun in this picture. It's kind of a moody, overcast day, but it's definitely brighter over to the left. So I don't want to put the warmer color in where the shadows are going to be. Above the water, in the water. Alright, now I've got all my darks in place. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is do the light or the sky. And I like to establish the sky. So it's very easy the way I have these laid out. I just simply have to go over to the lighter pastel section. That one's a little bit darker, but I want to put in a little bit of a darker color, and then I'll gradually lighten it up. I'm kind of making my sky marks point down to this tree, because I think this tree is going to be the focal tree, or the most important area. And I'm also starting to carve into the shape of the tree, because in reality this tree had, trying to search for the word here, more lacy branches. I guess that's a good way of putting it. So I'm starting to use the sky color to carve into the tree. Now when I put in a sky hole, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to flick it with my finger. When I flick it with my finger, it softens them just a little bit so that they're not so obvious. And then I'm going to go back over them with some of that dark. So sky holes are a multi-step process. You put a few in, you take a few out, you put a few more in, you take a few out. You know, very rarely do I get the sky holes correct the first go round. So, you know, those of you who feel frustrated sometimes by sky holes, just know it's a process. Don't feel bad if you don't get them all in your first pass. Just taking those blue, the lighter value blues that I have in my tray, and using them for the sky. Now, one of the really great things about choosing your colors in advance, even when I'm using a very limited palette like I am today, is notice that I can continue to paint and talk to you at the same time without having to go too crazy. What if I had not selected my colors? I would have to stop, go to my box, look for a color, think about what color I needed, and it really slows you down. And mentally, it just doesn't allow you to paint with what I like to call passion. And I really, when I paint, I really want to just respond to the painting and not have to worry about what colors and what colors I'm picking. One of the things we're going to talk about when it comes to color is that a limited palette is going to make a stronger painting, and you can get very quickly into what I call color chaos if you don't have your colors lined up, because you just keep adding more and more colors, and pretty soon you've lost any trace of color harmony. Excuse me. Excuse me. I've used all these colors, layered them in the sky. I don't have a cold. I'm choking on my spit, if you want to know the truth. That happens. Okay, so I'm going to reserve those colors because those will be used in the water. Now I want to work, excuse me, from the back. Thank you for the water, assistant. I appreciate that. I probably should keep one handy here. Now I'm working in the distant trees, so I'm using a kind of duller blue because I want it to feel like it's back in space just a little bit. And I'm using a lighter blue because, again, I want to create a little bit of an illusion of depth. So lighter, less detailed. I might really want a duller blue instead of that warm blue. Let me just go with a grayed down blue instead. And I'll reserve that warmer blue for the grass. Because even though I'm working with a limited palette of just one color family, I still want to create a feeling of depth in the painting. Alright, so now I've got trees in the distance, and now I'm going to worry about putting in the grass. I'm going to put down, I really like this really bright, intense blue, and I'm going to just put some of it in there just for, I'm going to call it my dirt color. And then I need to put in some grass color. Oh, I like that bright blue as well. So this is not a traditional way of painting when you're only working with one color family, but it really does free you, and it will definitely give you an idea whether or not you have A, an interesting composition, or B, if you're working correctly with your values. Because if you can't tell that this is a tree, then I'm doing something wrong. So that is one thing we want to, by working with one color, it really makes us accountable, I guess you can say. Now, I should tell you, and you probably already know, what is it called when we use, what is the color scheme when you only use one color? Color scheme with one color. It's right, monochromatic. Mono meaning one, chromatic, one color. So when we work with only one color, we have a monochromatic color scheme. And I really like, every once in a while, reminding myself that, you know what, it's kind of fun to work with just one color scheme and just seeing what you can come up with. And because you're working with a limited palette, it's just a lot of fun to just play with your marks and how you express yourself. Now, I'm going to work on the reflections. So I'm going to take my pinky finger and I'm going to pull the reflections down. I'm actually blending with my finger. I don't usually like to blend with my finger very often, but this is one instance where I do. And you can see that it's already starting to look a little bit watery. And then what I'm going to do is just take the color of the water, and I'm going to very, very lightly, now this is where you really have to have a light touch. When we talk about the right touch being a light touch, this is really critical that you have a light touch when you are going over your reflected trees, because you want to just barely cover them. Actually, some of the water sneaks in right here. Like that. Alright, so and sometimes, you know, you do a little bit too much, so I take my finger and I reinforce those reflected areas just like that. And then the last step is you're going to put in some of those current lines that might come across the water. So I'm just pressing down with a little bit of a harder mark to create a little bit of illusion of currents. And then the last thing I'm going to do is put in where the bank touches the water. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Remember, I don't want a worm, so I'm going to break it up. So we see where the bank is, and I'm going to put a little bit of flicks of light. And that's just to kind of show that that's where the water might be picked up by the wind. And it just separates the bank from the water. So that is how we take one color family and working with a variety of values and temperature and intensities, we can create a monochromatic painting where value is doing the work and then the color just gets the glory. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to doing the next one for you. Thanks.